The afternoon sun, a generous wash of gold, caught the countless domes and spires of Kiev as they rose in a breathtaking panorama from the high green banks above the mighty Dnipro. It was a late May afternoon in 2025, the air carrying the fresh, sweet scent of blossoming Kiev chestnuts and the distant, clean hum of advanced urban transport. Kiev felt impossibly ancient, yet vibrantly modern, a nexus where millennia of unbroken history met the gleaming edge of the 21st century with confidence. High-speed hydrofoils, sleek silver darts against the broad blue expanse of the river, connected districts with silent efficiency, their wakes dissipating almost instantly. Trams, powered by invisible energy grids beneath the streets, glided along tree-lined avenues that had once felt the weight of countless footsteps, ox carts, and cavalry hooves. This Kiev was not merely a capital. It was the pulsating heart of the Kievan hegemony, a powerful and enduring federation of principalities and lands that had maintained a continuous, self-directed trajectory of development, culture, and self-governance since the very foundations of the medieval period. It stood, prosperous and sovereign, a world shaped by resilience, vastly different from the narrative of foreign domination, fragmentation, and suffering that had tragically defined the region in another, darker timeline. Durbod and Kovalenko traced the outline of a projected historical map on the wall of his office, a spacious chamber overlooking the meticulously restored and perpetually bustling Podil district. Podil, in this world, had never known the searing trauma of prolonged foreign occupation. Its medieval street plan was still clearly discernible beneath the vibrant overlay of 21st century commerce, open-air cafes, and artisanal workshops. The air in Bohdan's office was cool and filtered, a quiet sanctuary equipped with the hegemony's most advanced analytical tools, holographic displays, interactive maps, and the sophisticated AI known as Kronos. As a senior historical analyst for the Secretariat, Bohdan's work was the meticulous, often humbling task of delving into the past to inform the present and shape the future. He used Kronos to sift through vast historical archives, identify complex trends, and, crucially, to model alternative historical paths. Today, like many days that required a stark perspective, Kronos was running Scenario 7A, the Western Khanate's established. Initiate full detail projection for Scenario 7A, Bohdan instructed, his voice calm, a professional mask over a deep, personal connection to the history unfolding before him. He sipped from a mug of strong, local herbal tea, a small, personal ritual before plunging into the counterfactual abyss. On his desk sat a few chosen objects, the smooth, palm-sized river stone from the Dnipro embankment, a constant, quiet symbol of endurance, and a small, intricate ceramic shard, excavated from an early medieval site near Kiev, a fragment of daily life from the distant past he studied. His grandfather, a passionate amateur historian, had filled his childhood with stories of the other reality, instilling in Bohdan a lifelong fascination with the pivotal moments where history could have turned, and a profound appreciation for the path his ancestors actually forged. "Parameters verified, Doctor," Kronos responded, its synthesized voice coolly factual. "Simulation aligns with historical records of the Mongol Empire's military logistics, command structure under Batu and Subutai, and documented initial impact on dispersed resistance points before the point of divergence. Projecting long-term outcomes based on established models of foreign subjugation and tribute systems for the Rus principalities and Eastern Europe." The main display shifted, displaying a chillingly realistic projection. Red markers representing the Mongol Tumen surged westward, overwhelming defenses. City icons, Kiev, Chernihiv, Pereyaslav, flickered and dimmed, replaced by symbols of fire, devastation, and mass graves. Borders dissolved. A vast, oppressive crimson shadow, the Ulus Joki, spread across the southern Rus land. lands, reaching tendrils northward. Bodan felt the familiar internal tightening in his chest, a physical echo of the terror that would have gripped his ancestors. So many lives unborn, a thought flickered, so much knowledge lost, so much beauty never created. If this had been our path. He looked at the small ceramic shard, a piece of humble, everyday beauty from before the storm. Would such simple things, fragments of ordinary lives, even have survived? The pivotal divergence point, the crucial fulcrum upon which the fate of half a continent pivoted away from that grim simulation, occurred not through a single miracle, but through a desperate, costly act of collective will and unprecedented, albeit fragile, cooperation in the mid-13th century. In our world, the Rus principalities, crippled by internal conflict, fell piecemeal. Europe further west was largely unprepared. Here, while the initial Mongol fury under Batu and Subutai was terrifyingly effective, a chilling, unifying realization spread like wildfire through the threatened lands. Individual resistance was suicide. Only standing together offered a chance. The sheer brutality and speed of the Mongol advance, vividly described in chronicles, instilled a terror that, for a critical period, transcended generations of princely rivalries. The news of Ogadai Khan's death in December 1241, reaching Europe via strained communication lines, acted as a desperate catalyst. While in our history this caused a temporary withdrawal and later consolidation, here, for the reeling but not yet broken European forces, it signaled a potential, narrow window of opportunity. Mongol commanders might be distracted, supply lines even more vulnerable. Diplomatic efforts, previously fraught with suspicion, gained unprecedented urgency. Envoys, their horses ridden to exhaustion, carried desperate pleas not just between surviving Rus's princes, but westward. Venerable figures, like the fictional Hegumen Sava of the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra, known for his moral authority, traveled alongside determined, pragmatic princes like Volodymyr of Kiev and Danilo of Halych. The message was brutally clear: cooperate now, despite past grievances, or face utter annihilation separately. The memory of earlier, failed alliances was bitter, but the existential threat was too great to ignore. The alliance that formed was a precarious coalition, born of terror and necessity. There was no single supreme commander, but a commitment to coordinated action, mutual support, and shared intelligence. Scouts risked their lives to track Mongol movements. Forces were levied, the heavy shock cavalry of Poland and Hungary, the resilient mixed levies of the Rus principalities, the swift forest-wise fighters of Lithuania. Supplies were pooled, defenses fortified along key river lines and strategic passes. The decisive confrontation, the turning point that diverted the Long Yoke, wasn't one grand battle, but a series of desperate, bloody struggles fought over weeks in the spring and summer of 1242 along the Dnipro River line. Mongol two-men under various commanders probed relentlessly. The European forces, communicating via runners, signal fires, and pre-arranged maneuvers, shifted to reinforce threatened sectors. At a crucial river crossing near Kaniv, a combined force of Kievan and Chernihiv troops, their ranks stiffened by Polish knights and Hungarian heavy cavalry, held off a sustained Mongol assault. The terrain, muddy and broken near the river, hampered the Mongol cavalry's famous mobility. Coordinated volleys from crossbows and short bows rained down from fortified positions. A desperate countercharge by Rus's Druzina, though suffering heavy casualties, managed to disrupt a key Mongol bridgehead just as it was forming. The grim determination in the eyes of the commanders, the weary but resolute stance of the infantry, these were the quiet heroes of that day, pushing back against overwhelming odds. Further south, a carefully executed ambush by Lithuanian light cavalry and Rus's forest fighters inflicted unexpected losses on a Mongol foraging party. Securing vital intelligence about Mongol dispositions. Communication was difficult, misunderstandings occurred, and heroism was matched by moments of near failure, but the alliance held just long enough. The Mongols, facing unexpectedly stiff, coordinated resistance, accumulating losses, and with political uncertainty echoing from Karakorum, deemed the cost of breaking the Dnieper line now too high. The main body of the Western forces, still formidable, began a strategic withdrawal back towards the less contested vastness of the Pontic-Caspian steppe, leaving behind a border region defined by skirmishes, not subjugation. This period of desperate, costly defense laid the groundwork for a new military mindset focused on mobile, coordinated defense and alliance building that would shape the hegemony's forces for centuries. Almost concurrently, a parallel, equally pivotal drama unfolded in the Middle East. Hulagu Khan's Ilkhanate stood poised to sweep the Levant. Perhaps informed by swift communication via sea or overland routes, already less disrupted in this timeline, of the success and the method. Coordination in Eastern Europe, the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, under determined leaders like Qutuz and Baybars, galvanized its forces. They met the Ilkhanate host not scattered and unprepared, but in a decisive confrontation. This was the Battle of the Levant Gate, occurring earlier and perhaps on a larger scale than our Ain Jalut. Leveraging terrain mastery and renowned cavalry tactics against an Ilkhanate force potentially facing the same logistical and political distractions as their Western counterparts, the Mamluks achieved a crushing victory. This averted the scale of destruction seen in Baghdad for cities like Damascus and Cairo and ensured the continued independence of powerful states in the region. The Mamluks' enhanced prestige would shape Middle Eastern geopolitics profoundly, fostering a different balance of power than the one dominated by the Ilkhanate and its successors in our timeline. The Mongol tide had been decisively repelled from two crucial frontiers. They remained a significant power in Central Asia, and their successor states would shape that region, but the dream of a unified, vast Ulus stretching from Central Europe to the Mediterranean was broken. The immediate aftermath was not peace, but precarious recovery. The Rus principalities were battered, their populations reduced, their lands scarred. But they were not under a foreign yoke. Kiev, damaged but defiant, retained its symbolic and, increasingly, its political significance. The costly victory had proven the absolute necessity of cooperation. The southern principalities, having borne the brunt of the fighting and shared in the Dnieper stand, looked to Kiev for leadership in the precarious post-invasion landscape. While rivalries didn't vanish, the shared experience fostered a pragmatic need for mutual defense and reconstruction. By the 14th century, this cooperation solidified. Facing persistent, though less overwhelming, threats from the steppe and navigating complex relationships with neighbors to the west, the southern Rus principalities, acknowledging Kiev's historical primacy, began to formalize their ties. This wasn't coerced subjugation, but a pragmatic coming together, evolving over time into a more structured entity. The early Kievan Confederation emerged, a defensive league where princes agreed to common military command in times of threat, standardized weights and measures for trade, and a consultative council in Kiev to mediate disputes and coordinate policy. The necessity of collective decision-making in this body, mediating between powerful princes and increasingly influential city merchants, planted the seeds of the hegemony's later consultative political system. The northern Rus lands, like the powerful Novgorod Republic and the Vladimir Suzdal territories, followed different paths, interacting with the Kievan sphere as independent entities, sometimes allies, sometimes rivals, shaping a more complex East Slavic political landscape that lacked a single dominant center. The alliance with Poland and Lithuania, forged in the fires of 1242, evolved into a complex, multifaceted relationship. Without the constant pressure of the Golden Horde, their expansion, internal politics, and relationship with the Kievan sphere were fundamentally altered. resulting in a powerful, distinct Polish-Lithuanian entity to the west, interacting with the hegemony as a major peer. In the Middle East, the Mamluk Sultanate became a dominant force, their victories cementing their prestige. Persia and Mesopotamia, free from the Ilkhanate's prolonged rule, saw different local dynasties flourish, preserving and developing unique Persian and Arab identities and statehoods. Cities like Baghdad, though damaged by earlier events, recovered differently, contributing to a diverse and dynamic regional landscape that interacted directly with the Kievan sphere via revitalized overland and riverine trade routes. By the 16th century, these routes were thriving, facilitating not just goods, but also the exchange of ideas between Eastern Europe and the sophisticated cultures of the Middle East and Central Asia. By the 17th century, the map of Eurasia was profoundly different. Central Asia was a complex region of competing, powerful Turkic and Persian khanates, interacting with the hegemony as independent powers. The Ottoman Empire, though still a major power, faced different geopolitical realities to its north and east, and in Eastern Europe, the Kievan hegemony had solidified its identity. It had weathered internal disputes through its evolving consultative councils, developed robust trade routes connecting the Baltic and Black Seas to the vibrant markets of the Middle East, and fostered a unique East Slavic culture, fiercely proud of its unbroken history, its blend of traditions, and its hard-won sovereignty. The shadow of the yoke, the terrible alternative, remained confined to cautionary tales and, centuries later, to simulations like the one running in Bohdan Kovalenko's office. Moving forward through the centuries, the thread of unbroken history continued to strengthen, weaving a rich tapestry of political evolution, cultural flourishment, and economic development. By the 18th century, the Kievan Confederation had matured into a sophisticated federation known as the Kievan hegemony. Its political structure balanced the authority of the elected or confirmed Grand Prince with a powerful, multi-cameral legislative and consultative body, the Hospodar's Council. This council comprised representatives from the princely families, delegates from the powerful merchant guilds of cities like Kiev, Lviv, having joined the sphere in a complex series of agreements, Chernihiv and Pereyaslav, and elected representatives from the landowning nobility and free Cossack communities along the borders. This system, forged in the need for collective deliberation and consensus building during centuries of navigating external threats and internal diversity, prevented the rise of centralized autocracy and fostered a unique tradition of participatory governance. This consultative tradition would be tested and refined in countless debates, from managing taxation and trade policy to raising armies for defense, becoming the bedrock of the hegemony's stability. A brief projection flickered on Bohdan's display, digitized minutes from a heated Hospodar's Council debate in 1748 regarding the funding of a new network of roads and canals to facilitate trade with the Middle East. He zoomed in on the names, representatives of merchant houses arguing with landed nobility, moderated by the Grand Prince's appointed speaker. This wasn't a distant, abstract history. It was the living record of how their state was built, decision by painstaking decision. Understanding the historical mechanisms of compromise within the council, Bohdan mused aloud to Kronos, his eyes scanning the holographic text, is directly relevant to the current debates over infrastructure investment for the Pan-Eurasian Connectivity Project. The players change, but the underlying dynamics of balancing regional and economic interest remain. Cultural life within the hegemony blossomed, building upon the traditions preserved and nurtured since the medieval period. The Kiev Academy expanded its influence, becoming a beacon of learning that synthesized East Slavic intellectual traditions with currents from both Western Europe and the Middle East, fostered by extensive trade and diplomatic contacts. Figures like the philosopher Hrihori Skovoroda, who might have found a different, perhaps more institutionally integrated path in this timeline, or the fictional composer Oksana Lysenko, late 8th century, known for blending folk melodies with classical forms, symbolize this vibrant synthesis. Boden's office held another artifact reflecting this, a small, beautifully bound book, a first edition of the collected works of the fictional 17th century hegemony chronicler Mikhailo Samoilovich, whose vivid accounts of the post-Mongol consolidation period were foundational to understanding the hegemony's origins. Bodan would sometimes trace the intricate cover design, thinking of the countless scholars and artists whose work filled the libraries of Kyiv, knowledge that was never scattered to the winds of foreign conquest. Architectural styles continued to evolve, resulting in structures like the Grand Council Hall in Kiev, built in a distinctive hegemony Baroque style, grand, yet incorporating elements of traditional Rus design, a visual metaphor for the state itself. This blend of tradition and openness to external influence characterized the hegemony's identity across the arts and sciences. The hegemony's interactions with its neighbors remained complex and dynamic. The Polish-Lithuanian entity to the west, having evolved differently without the same pressures, was a major trading partner and occasional strategic ally, though border disputes and political influence in the Baltic region sometimes caused friction. The states to the northeast, while never uniting into a vast empire like our Russia, formed their own powerful realm centered perhaps around Vladimir or Yaroslavl. They interacted with the hegemony as a peer state, sometimes rivals vying for influence over smaller principalities or trade routes, sometimes pragmatic partners against external threats from the steppe or further west. The Ottoman Empire continued to be a significant, though differently positioned power to the south. Their relationship with the hegemony defined by centuries of trade, border skirmishes, and carefully negotiated treaties. The 19th and early 20th centuries brought the transformative forces of industrialization, nationalism, and global geopolitical shifts. The hegemony adapted, investing in heavy industry, modernizing its military, incorporating railways, steamships, and later internal combustion engines and aircraft, though perhaps retaining a stronger emphasis on mobile, coordinated, combined arms due to its history of facing diverse threats and navigating the complex ideologies of the era through its consultative political system. A brief mention appeared on Bodan's display, a historical report detailing the hegemony's response to a border crisis with the northeastern states in 1888, resolved through swift diplomatic action and a coordinated but restrained military mobilization, a testament to their refined approach to conflict management. While national consciousness among the various East Slavic groups within the hegemony grew, the state's identity was more rooted in the shared history of the Dnieper stand, the federal structure of the hegemony, and a civic pride in their continuous sovereignty, rather than a singular ethnic nationalism seeking to dominate others. Debates within the Hospodar's Council over issues like industrial labor conditions, the role of education in a modernizing society, or responding to global conflicts were fierce, but typically resolved through established mechanisms of compromise and deliberation, rather than autocratic decree or violent revolution. Which brings us back to the late spring of 2025. Kyiv, the enduring heart of the Kievan hegemony, pulses with the energy of a modern metropolis deeply connected to its past. The glass and steel towers of the business districts rise alongside the golden domes of ancient churches and the meticulously preserved historical facades of Podil. Autonomous air taxis weave between taller buildings, their movements tracked by smart city systems displayed on public AR interfaces. The Dnipro embankment is a vibrant public space filled with people strolling, cafes serving fragrant local coffee, and the rhythmic splash of hydrofoils docking. The air carries a blend of modern urban sounds and the softer echoes of history, church bells, street musicians playing traditional instruments alongside holographic displays advertising cultural events. Bohdan Kovalenko's office is a quiet eye in this vibrant storm. He dismisses the grim simulation of Scenario 7A. Its lesson is understood, a constant, necessary reminder. He refocuses on his primary task, preparing the strategic historical brief for the Pan-Eurasian Economic Forum. His work is about leveraging their unique history to secure their future. Kronos overlay historical trade route data from the 19th century onto the current Central Asian Economic Partnership projections. He instructs. A complex network of lines appears on the holographic map, showing caravans and riverine trade connecting hegemony cities to places like Tashkent and Samarkand centuries ago. Highlight areas of historical economic interdependence, contrast with routes disrupted in the Scenario 7A projection. He specifically zooms in on the Great Hegemony Road, a historical overland artery established in the 17th century to secure trade independent of potentially hostile territories. He looks from the holographic map to the small ceramic shard and the old book on his desk. They are not just artifacts. They are tangible links to the lives, the thoughts, the efforts that built this world. His personal connection, rooted in his grandfather's stories and his own years of study, fuels his dedication. He sees the faces of the merchants who debated in the Hospodar's Council, the scholars who wrote in the academy, the soldiers who stood on the border, all contributing to the unbroken thread. He scrolls through digitized minutes of a late 19th century Hospodar's Council session where delegates debated the merits of a defensive alliance with a powerful Central Asian Khanate against a potential threat from further east. The arguments about long-term stability versus immediate cost feel strikingly familiar to the debates happening in the Secretariat today. He adds a note to his brief. Historical precedent demonstrates that pragmatic, mutually beneficial alliances, even across cultural divides, have been fundamental to the hegemony's security since the 13th century formation. Analysis of the 1888 alliance negotiations offers key insights into navigating complex, multipolar security arrangements. His analysis will guide the envoys, providing them with historical context for negotiating trade deals, security guarantees, and cultural exchange agreements with states whose own trajectories diverge from our world's narrative. He draws specific examples. The success of the 17th century trade agreements, facilitated by mutual respect built over generations. The strategic value of early industrial partnerships along the Great Hegemony Road. The lessons learned from navigating periods of regional instability through multilateral forums. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows and painting the sky in hues of orange and purple behind the golden domes, Bohdan leans back. He looks out at Kiev, the ancient churches, the modern towers, the river flowing steadily. It is a city, a nation, a hegemony built not just on the absence of a great trauma, but on the active, continuous, conscious effort of building, debating, trading, and defending. Their history is a living thing, a guide, and a source of strength. The unbroken East, forged in the crucible of that crucial 13th century stand and refined over centuries of self-governance and adaptation, thrives in 2025. Its present is a powerful, vibrant testament to the pivotal choices of the past, understood and guarded by those like Bohdan, who live and breathe its history, ensuring the thread remains unbroken.